Hey guys, and welcome to part 3 on how to make the inventory system for our multiplayer game. So in this episode we're going to be working on a way to A. Add items easily to our inventory, B. Implement dragging and dropping of items within the inventory. So let's get started. So down here we're going to create a new function and we're going to say add item, and we're going to add a parameter of ID. So in this function we're going to just use an ID to add an item to the inventory. So first we're going to have to sift through the inventory to check if there's an empty slot, and if there's an empty slot we're going to ahead and add this item that we just sifted in with the ID in that empty slot. So what I mean by this, we're going to do a for loop and we're going to go through the inventory system. So what the for loop is going to do is check if the first one is taken. If it is, then it's going to go to the next one. If that's taken, then it's going to keep going until it finds an empty slot, and we're going to add the item there. So to do that in script, do a for loop and we're going to go through the inventory and we're going to use the count. So for all the inventory slots we're going to go through all of them, and if we find an empty slot, so to do this we'll say if inventory dot I dot, let's go, item name is equal to null, we're going to go ahead and do something. So like here, because there's no item in the slot, it will return null. So then we're going to go ahead and add the item there, but we don't know what item to add yet, so we have to go through the database. So basically what we did here, well basically exactly what we did here, but we're going to use it right here. So yeah, it's basically just the same as this, so we can go ahead and do it here. So we're going to need another for loop, and we have to go through, change this to J because we're already using the I here, it won't make sense. So we're going to go through the database dot items dot count. So we're going to go through all these items, and if we find the item, so if database.items j is equal to the ID that we put in here, the item ID, sorry, item ID is equal to the ID that we sifted in here, then we want to go ahead and add the item. So now that we have the empty inventory slot, we're going to say the inventory I is equal to database dot items j. So if you're unfamiliar with for loops, to understand it here, so I'll go back to my paint drawing. So here, let's keep this side to side actually. So for this for loop, we are going to go through the inventories. So in a for loop, it's going to go through the line of code, and when it's finished that line of code, the code that's within the parameters, then it's going to go ahead and increment the int value, and it's going to keep doing that until we are at the count of the inventory. So in this case, it's checking if the item is null, and if it's not, then it increments automatically, and if it is null, then it's going to go ahead and not increment, but it's going to go now further within, and it has to complete this before it increments. So in this case, so it will increment here, so 1, it will increment here, 2, increment here, so 3, now we're on the third one, and now we reach here, so I will equal to 4, or 3 in this case because it starts on 0, and then it's going to go ahead and add the inventory to this number of the inventory. I hope I didn't confuse you. If you already know what for loops is, there's pretty basic stuff to you then. And if we find an item, go ahead and make this up. So if we have added the item, we can go ahead and break the for loop, and we're done here. So to test this, all we do is say, we can take away this and just say add item 0, and we can go ahead and play it, and it should add this sword. And as you can see, the sword is added to the first slot, which is the first one. So we can go ahead and test this further, add a couple more, and we should get the correct, and there you go. You get 4 items in 4 different slots. Now we can go ahead and work on the drag and drop and drag and swap function, and we're going to go ahead and do this within the draw inventory method. So before the increment is done, we want to go ahead and check whether or not the certain SlotRect is containing our mouse position, and if it is, and we're doing something like pressing the left mouse button and the right mouse button, then we go ahead and interact with the slot that contains the SlotRect that we're over currently. So what I mean by this, let's say our mouse is here. It's going to go through all the SlotRects, so the SlotRect here, so this rect here, and it's going to check whether or not our mouse button was within it. So it's going to check here, and it's going to say, no, it's not here, no, it's not here, no, it's not here, no, it's not here. Yes, our mouse button is currently here. And if it is there, then we want to do something. So in order to check whether our mouse button is there within the SlotRect, we say if the SlotRect dot, and we're going to use the contains method, and all that is a true and false statement, and we want to put in a vector 2 point because the SlotRect is just checking whether or not it is within a certain X and Y region, and we want to check our mouse position here. So to do this, we say event dot current dot mouse position, and we can go ahead and do stuff within this now. So if it does contain our current mouse position, we want to invoke some stuff as well. So if we're hovering over our mouse button, we want to create a tooltip or something that we can identify what we're over now. So right now, when we hover over our items, we have no idea what they are. So we have to create some sort of tooltip to identify the item that we're over currently. So to this, we can create a string method that will return a string, and we'll just call this one create tooltip. So this is just going to be used to create the tooltip for us so we don't have to do it. So we're going to sift in the item, a item, because it's going to contain all the information that we want to get out of the tooltip. So here we can create a local variable, but I think we're going to need to, have to access this from a different method. So up here, we're just going to say string tooltip, and we want to use this somewhere else. And we can go ahead and remove that and say the tooltip is equal to the item that, so this item's the item name plus, in string terminology, a forward slash or backward slash. Always gonna mix up. No, it's forward slash. No, that's backslash. N is a space. So we want to have a space, or let's have 2 spaces in between our item description. And we can close that off, and we just want to say return tooltip. So that fills in the variable that is tooltip. So we can go ahead and call this method from here, and we want to fill in the slot I, so the current slot that we're over now, because slot is a item, and it's just the I is telling the script what item we want to use here. And we want to tell the script, the computer, that we want to show the tooltip now for the player. So we'll just say a boolean show tooltip, and all this is going to do is say we want to show a tooltip now. So now we have to draw the tooltip somewhere. So to do this, we say on GUI function, because it is going to be a simple GUI box, and instead of just having it empty, we're going to fill it with our tooltip information. So here, so if show tooltip is true, then we want to create a GUI box, and now we want to fill in, create a new rect. So here we'll say a new rect for this GUI box is going to be our event.current.mouseposition.x for the X position, copy and paste this for the Y position, and we want to say, let's say this box is going to be 200 by 200, and for the information we want to put in, it's going to be the tooltip information. Close that off, and if we can go back to our script and test that now, and if you see, you go over it, it has the tooltip information. If we're not over something, it is empty, and as you can see, it never disappears. And we have to go ahead and tell the script when to not show the tooltip. So each time the onGUI function is called, we want to say the tooltip is equal to nothing, because it's going to go it's just going to happen so quick. So it's going to be for a split second, you won't even notice it, like it's very unnoticeable, completely unnoticeable I should say, that the tooltip is going to be empty, and it's going to go through the script. So it's going to be empty, and once it reaches here and checks if you're over something, it's going to create the tooltip again, and it's going to be the tooltip is going to be full of the information again. So once it reaches here and we're not over an item, we want to say the show tooltip box shouldn't be there. So if the tooltip is still equal to nothing by this stage of the script, then we want to say show tooltip equals false. So it's going through here, it's going to be empty, and then it's going to call this function, and it's going to go through here, and if it's not over something, the tooltip will remain empty, and if it reaches here and it's still empty, we want to go ahead and say show tooltip is false. So we can go ahead and test that now, and as you can see, we can go over an item, and once you drag it off, it disappears. It'll be empty here, but here it will create a tooltip. So now we can go ahead and work on the drag and drop function. So here so if we're over an object and we do something, we want to go ahead and drag the item. So we want to say, what do we want to do before it says we want to drag the item? So we want to check whether or not the event.current.button is equal to 0. So just like the shoot script, we want to check if the left mouse button is down, which corresponds to the 0 key. Here it also corresponds to the left mouse button as the 0 key. And you know what? I don't want to keep typing this throughout the script, so we can go ahead and create a we can probably do it up here actually. Let's go ahead and do it up here. So event E, and we're going to say in the start is equal to event.current. So down here, all we can do here is say E. So if we are pressing left mouse button, and if we're doing some sort of dragging function, and luckily for us, the event.current has a type that includes a mouse drag type. So it automatically senses whether or not we are dragging our mouse. So to call that, we say E, so event.type.current.type is equal to event type dot. So you get a list of heaps of event types that it has. So it has a drag update, mouse drag that we're going to be using. So it's checking if we're using the scroll wheel currently. But here we're only going to check if we are dragging the mouse. So there's two of them. One of them is the past tense and one is the current tense. So we're going to be using if we're currently dragging the mouse. And if we're doing this, we want to drag the item. So we have to create a boolean here and say we are dragging item. And we have to create, let's see, let's create a index here. So previous index, you'll see what I mean by this. So we'll keep these together, and we need to create a item. So this is going to store the information of the item that we just dragged. So once we dragged an item, we're going to delete it from the inventory and store that information of the item that we just dragged somewhere else, and we're going to add that information to the inventory wherever we drop it. So we have to keep a reference to that, and we'll just say this is the dragged item. So if we're dragging, if we're doing the dragging thing, we're going to say is dragging is true. It'll default to false at the start, and we want to say the previous index is equal to I. So this is important for when we want to swap items in the inventory, so swap places in the inventory. So what I mean by this is just take this away. So just say we drag from here, then it stores this information in the previous index. So this will be 7 because it starts on 0. This will be 7, and we drag it to 1, which already has an item. Now all we have to say is you, the item in slot 0, you are going to be moving to this index. So you're going to be moving here. So you're going to be moving out, and you're going to be moving to the index of 7, which in this case is inventory slot 8. And this item will go here. So it's just important for if there's another item, then it's just simple relocation for that item. So now we want to say the dragged item is equal to the current slot that we're on, because slots is an item. We just say it's going to be to the item, and we just want to go ahead and clear that item slot inventory. The I is equal to new item. So because I'm doing this, we have to go ahead and create a reference here. So in my previous video, I mentioned the problem of doing this, of having 2 lists. Now we have to synchronize the one list with the other. So this is pretty simple. It doesn't affect anything. So we're just saying the slot I is equal to inventory dot I. So the slot I is just for here to keep it simple for what we're doing in when we're dealing with slots. So all this doing is when we do empty the inventory thing, it's going to synchronize to the slot list as well. Oh, I just realized we already have it. What am I doing? Okay, don't mind me. I'm really re-explaining things now. Okay, so now we've done that. We want to, so okay, let's go ahead and, okay, so we're gonna drag it, and it should just delete technically. I just realized we can't do that because it's doing, okay, so we have to create it as a local variable here, and we'll say equals to e current here. Okay, now we shouldn't be getting those errors, I don't think. Okay, so I click here and I drag, and it just disappears. Click here, drag, it just disappears. Okay, so it's, okay, let's go back slowly. I was just testing here, see if it works. Okay, so I'm clicking, nothing's happening, but if I'm clicking and dragging, it disappears. So if I'm click, nothing happens. I can keep clicking it, nothing happens, but if click and drag, then it does something, which is exactly what we want. So we want to check if we are placing an item somewhere. So if our E type, our event.current type is equal to event type dot mouse up, which means we're just releasing the current button that we're pressing in the previous index or previous event call, and checking if we're lifting it up. And we want to check if we are lifting our mouse and if we are currently also dragging an item. Then we want to do a couple things. So we want to say the inventory dot previous index. So we are relocating any item that's in the current SlotRect that we're over now. So let's say here we're moving it to here and there's no item there. Well, lucky for us, it's just moving an empty item to here, and it's clearing this slot, and it's moving the object that we're dragging now to this slot. So if there's no item, no worries, then it just clears the slot basically. So we're just saying previous index is equal to inventory dot I, and the inventory, so the one that we're over now, is equal to the dragged item. So this item up here. So the information we stored up here, we're going to make the inventory that we're currently over now. So this could be just as well be slots, but inventory is just the way to go in this area. So that's why it's confusing. Why do I use both? You have to choose your spots where to use them properly. So once we say the inventory is equal to the dragged item, we want to go ahead and say we're no longer dragging an item, and we want to nullify the dragged item in preparation for the next drag potentially. So we can go ahead and test that now. Okay, so let's host here and click and drag. So there's nothing showing currently, but if I release it here, that's okay. We have to move this toolbox out of the way. So let's create a little offset for these, because currently we're releasing it over this box and it's not realizing what's happening, and it just basically deletes the item. So we can go ahead and host and drag, drop. Drag, drop. Okay, I just realized why that's not working, because here, if you follow what we're doing here, it's checking whether or not the item name is not null. So right now we are dragging it to nothing, and the script doesn't recognize this pathing of actions that we're doing. It's because we're dragging it to a empty game object, a empty slot, and it doesn't know what to do because we haven't told it what can happen if we're not over the drag drop. So actually we have to go ahead and move this within the brackets, and we want to say if we aren't dragging it to an item that is full or used, we want to go ahead and basically recall this. So if, alright, I'm a bit confused now. Okay, So if we're not dragging it to an empty, so if we are dragging it to an empty slot, then we want to call this, because this is checking if it is full. And if it's not full, we want to go ahead and do this. So basically what we did up here, you'll check if the SlotRect is contained. You can easily just swap these two, it doesn't really matter. If it does contain, then we want to go ahead and say the inventory is equal to that. Okay, so if you're not super duper confused by now, then we're good. Then everything should work from here. TM. Okay, it should work. Okay, so we host, drag, drop. Okay, it's like magic. It's working now. I'm relieved. Before it was very confusing. Okay, so drag, and we just dragged 4 million items away. We're like, wait, what? What's happening? Where'd my other items go? We have to check. We have to check here. So right now we can just, it's just dragging heaps of items, because we're not saying that we're already dragging an item. We don't want to drag 4 million items, because we aren't storing all that information somewhere. We're only storing it once, and only a singular time, or a single one of them. So we want to check, we want to say we only want to be able to drag an item if we're not already dragging an item. And that's a simple thing. We just say if we're not dragging an item. Go ahead and test that again. Get that out of the way. Drag, and we see if we drag it over the other items, it doesn't do anything. Place it here, it works. Do it again, doesn't take away the items. Place it here, and it works. Now we just need a quick visualization of what we're dragging, and we should be good on that part. So on the onGUI function, we want to say if we're dragging an item, we want to go ahead and create another GUI box, and much like what we did here, so we can just copy paste this over here, and instead of having a 200 by 200 box, we just say a 60 by 60 box. And we're not going to sift in the tool information, tooltip information. We're going to sift in the dragged item dot item icon. So we're going to draw the item icon of the dragged item that we're dragging. So that's a quick and easy way to show what we are dragging. So click drag, and as you can see, it draws a box with us. And I just realized a simpler way looks a lot better. Instead of a box, we'll just say draw texture, because we're just drawing a texture. We don't need the whole box with it. So test it again, and now it just draws a texture, and we can just do all this. And you can see if we release it not over a SlotRect, it doesn't go away until we place it here. And in the next video, if I'm going to implement a destroy system or a drop system, so if you drag it over here, it'll ask you if you want to drop it, or it drops it automatically. I don't know what you guys want. You can either have one or the other, or we can have both. I don't know how you'd have both, but you could have both. But we'll do that in the next video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the dragging, dropping, the confusing, the roller coaster-ness of it. but we are almost done with our inventory system, and once we've done this and we understand it, the crafting system in the hotbar system would go so much smoother, a lot easier, because I don't need to explain why I'm doing this, why I'm going through these for loops, etc. So I hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys can play around with this a little bit. Hopefully you guys can add on to it and see if I'm already doing it in the next video. Leave a comment below what you want to see, what I need to improve on, because I know this isn't the greatest. But thank you guys for watching. See you guys in the next video. Good night, or goodbye, or good morning.